Hello and welcome to today's Dwelling in the Word. We're going to be looking today at Ephesians chapter 4, and the first 6 verses. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. This admonition that Paul gives us flows out of everything that he's written so far in this letter. I remind you in Ephesians 1 verse 10 that God's plan that God has predetermined and has set into motion and will bring about is that he aims to bring everything in heaven and earth together in Christ. God has taken a huge step forward in this plan by bringing the Jews and Gentiles together in Christ in the church. And so Paul then prays, as we looked at yesterday, that we will have the power through the Spirit to grasp how enormous is the size of God's love and power that is at work in bringing all of this about, and the hope that we have in Christ for all of this to be fully realized as heaven and earth come together, brought together in Christ, and we as God's people fully participate in all that this will be and all that this means. And this is the first 3 chapters of Ephesians. And then comes chapter 4 as Paul really presses hard on us and he urges us to live a life that's worthy of our participation in this, our calling and invitation to be a part of this incredible thing that God is doing and God has already begun. We are not to undo what God has already accomplished in Christ and the Spirit. We are to do everything in our power to work and strive in such a way that we live in this reality that God has brought about through sending Jesus first in his death and his resurrection, but then also sending the Spirit into the world. And for the Apostle Paul, living a life that is worthy of the calling to which we have been called in Christ begins with the love of God that he just prayed about at the end of chapter 3, and then immediately moves into what this love is bringing into our world. Unity in the Spirit through the bond of peace. One. All these things are about unity. All these things are about us coming together in Christ, the bond of the Spirit, the peace that comes through unity, being one and reconciled with God and with one another. This is God's dream, God's plan for the world, and this is what God is bringing about through Christ, through the Spirit, and our participation in all those things as the church, as the people of God. So be about that every day. But let this be a starting point for you as you think about what it is to live a life that's worthy of the calling we have in Christ. It starts with love, bearing with one another, being patient with one another, and doing everything that we can to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. Let's be about that today.